Welcome back to Behavior Shift, everybody. Today we're digging into a seriously underrated superpower, and that's called tiny habits. It's about small steps that aren't just making things easier, they're actually making your ability to do things smarter.
Yeah, so small is the new big. If you've been trying to change your life by just moving that mountain, well, today you're going to want to throw away that bulldozer, maybe grab yourself a teaspoon.
That's really small. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is a tiny habit, and what are we doing with this teaspoon?
Yeah, so good question. So a tiny habit is exactly what it sounds like. It is a ridiculously small behavior, and it's one that you do consistently. So, for instance, flossing one tooth, doing one push up, or taking one deep breath. And all of those are to start you down the path, right? And it's based on BJ Fogg's research at Stanford. BJ Fogg is a researcher who's been doing a lot of work on this for many, many years. And it's shockingly effective because it hacks your brain's wiring for success.
Sounds really cool, but how does that actually work? I mean, one push-up is not exactly going to get me in shape, right?
Right. No, one push-up won't get you ripped. That is not what we're saying here, right? But here's the trick about it. That that tiny habit isn't about the result today, or it isn't about that one push-up today. It's about building an identity about who you are and the person you want to become. It's also about starting. It's about getting off of your sitting on the couch, and it's actually getting you to do something. You're becoming someone who works out. You're becoming someone who does a push-up. And once you see yourself that way, scaling up is natural. Let me give you an example, right? So many years ago, I've been using this process for a while, probably going on 8-9 years, and I can tell you it's really successful for me. I didn't floss my teeth as much as I needed to in the past. So when I read about this, one of the things I started to do was I actually started to floss my teeth and track it. And I track it if I just flossed one tooth, between one tooth. That's all I needed to do. And I didn't need to go and floss all of my teeth and doing all of that stuff. Now that seems pretty silly when you think about it, right?
Little
And
bit.
actually but it works out, because what it does is, to get that check mark for me, to get that thing to check off, I need to do one tooth. Well, all right, the effort is getting into getting the floss out, putting it around my fingers and starting. And once I'm in there, I never stop at one tooth. I don't think I've stopped at one tooth ever, right? Now, I might not do my entire mouth, but I will do most of my mouth and every night, and majority of the time I do. But it is getting started, and it's because of that tiny habit of flossing one tooth that I'm continually doing that over and over and over again. And in those 8-9 years, I can probably count on one hand the number of nights that I haven't flossed my teeth.
No, that's really cool. It sounds like a small but effective way of doing things for sure. Um, Basically, this tiny habit idea is hacking your own psychology. Is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing?
it's slipping past all of the excuses that we make, right? Because you make that first step so small that your brain can't talk you out of it. It's like, oh, I can't do all those teeth, but how bad is your brain if it's like saying it can't even floss one tooth,
Yeah,
right?
it's really about getting started, it sounds like. So
Mhm.
earlier you mentioned BJ Fogg, the researcher, and we know he's got his own formula. It's called BMAP. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah. So a little behavioral science cocktail. So BMAP stands for here, and I'll walk through this, right? B is for behavior, and behavior happens when M, motivation, A, ability, and P, prompt, all show up at the same time. So the hypothesis around this is that when our motivation and ability are triggered by a prompt, then a behavior happens. Now, the ability and the motivation have to get over any friction that is there, but that is why we make things really simple.
And what does that look like in real life if we were going to apply that?
Okay, let's start with a journaling thing. So you want to start journaling, but man, it seems really difficult and daunting to you, right? So you have, let's start with M, right? So the behavior that you're trying to do is start a journaling practice. The motivation you have is that there's something to get excited about, right? You feel like journaling is going to be good for you in some way. It's going to capture moments in your life, or it's going to help you process the day. It's going to help you set your day up better, whatever it is, right? You're going to have some motivation to do that. Now, it's not world-changing motivation. If it was, you'd already be doing this, right? But there is a motivation. You want to do it. But now it comes into your ability and what it takes, right? So, all right, I have the ability to write. I have a pen or a pencil. I just got out, maybe go out and buy a journal, right? So now you have the ability and you have the means. So there's no excuses. And finally, you set up a prompt. So you anchor that activity of writing in your journal to something that is a prompt. So maybe it's pouring your morning coffee. Maybe it's after you brush your teeth at night. So if any of those pieces are missing, if it's too complicated, if you forgot, if you're just not motivated to do it, you're not in the mood, then you don't do it, right? But when all three line up, boom, your behavior happens. You're writing in that journal. And this is where the tiny part comes into play. So you can improve your chances of starting a journaling practice if you set the behavior that you're trying to drive to, writing in a journal, as super, super tiny. So that means it's not even writing a single sentence. It might be just making it your goal is to write down the date. Just write the date down. So your brain is going, oh, that's super simple. So even if you're not in the mood, right? Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're really, it's like morning, you're pouring your coffee, but you're late and you don't want to necessarily do it because you got to get to work or whatever it is. Well, I can at least open up that journal and write down the date. I can get it done quickly, right? Or maybe it's just like, feels like a lot of work to think about what I want to do today or write an essay about this, but you don't have to do that. What you're doing is you're setting yourself up for success by saying, okay, I just have to write the date down. That's it.
So much of this is just about getting started, it seems like, in the smallest way possible. And contrary to popular belief, really motivation is not the big hero here. Is that correct?
Right. It's not, motivation. Motivation is that flaky friend, right? He shows up late, cancels plans, you can't depend on motivation, right? It's that activity or the ability that is what saves you. It makes making that action so small that motivation doesn't really matter, right? When motivation bails, you still follow through doing it.
And I think we all have that flaky friend, so we can probably relate. And if you don't have it, then it's probably you. Let's get practical now. So say I want to take this idea and put it into reality. I want to start working out again. What's the tiny habit version of getting that started? How do I go about setting myself up for success?
Okay, so let's think about this as if you wanted to start running, right? You don't start with running 5 miles. You start with something as simple as, I'm going to put on my tennis shoes. All right. And I'm going to put on my tennis shoes after I brush my teeth in the morning. That's it. Sneakers on equals success. You can check off that day on your calendar or mark it however you want. If you want to do more, great. If not, if all you do is put on your tennis shoes, you've won the day.
That sounds almost too easy.
Exactly. It's supposed to feel too easy. And
Okay.
that's the point. You're removing the friction so that the habit builds itself. So every time you do it, you get this little sense of success, right? And that success has a little dopamine release in your brain, and that becomes addictive. And you want to have that happen.
So let's do another example here. Let's say that I want to start meditating. How do I go about doing that? Let's walk through that process.
So think about this again. All right. We want to meditate. What's meditating? You need some breathing exercises. All right. Well, I could breathe for a couple minutes. That doesn't seem no. Even get it simpler than that. One deep breath. And let's put that to some prompt. So one deep breath after you sit down at your desk in the morning. It's not 5 minutes of deep breathing. It's not even 2 minutes of deep breathing. It's one breath. And you'll probably end up taking a few more because you're already there and you're doing it. But the goal is to keep that bar stupid low.
That's a level I can work with. I can do stupid low, and I think a lot of people can.
Yeah, I think it's the only level that consistently wins over time is the stupid low bar. Yeah.
Probably true. Probably true. So before we wrap up here, can we get a quick checklist? Like, how do we go? Like, what's our set up a tiny habit checklist? How do we do that?
Right. So we know the MAP part of this, right? So, but let's a couple different pieces on this. So three simple things, right? One, anchor it to something you're already doing. So set that prompt to something that is already going on in your life, like brushing your teeth or getting that cup of coffee in the morning or sitting down at your desk. Keep it with something as opposed to trying to start it fresh and new with something else. Pair it with something that you're already doing consistently. Second, make it laughably small, right? It's not even a minute of deep breathing. It is one breath. It is not going even outside for a walk. It is putting on your shoes. If you're thinking that this is feeling so tiny, it almost feels dumb, you're doing it right. That is good. And lastly, and we didn't talk about this before, but celebrate that you did it. You know, the celebration for me and my flossing was checking off that piece on my calendar. Every day I got to mark off my calendar. That was a little celebration. You know, you could do a fist bump. You could say, nailed it to yourself. Whatever feels like a tiny victory to yourself, do that.
And I love that part too. I think so much of this is about feeling good about the success that you're having and actually getting through that process. So seriously, don't be afraid to fist bump, pat yourself on the back, let out a big whoop whoop or something, whatever you got to do to feel good about what you did. That's a better one. Even if that success is microscopic, you still had a win for the day, and that's going to build motivation and momentum over time, which is great. So
Yeah, totally. So emotions wire habits, not repetition alone, right? So remember that there's an emotional part to building up these routines, these habits. And the faster that your brain links a behavior to feeling good, the faster that it sticks. So it's important to celebrate.
very cool. So challenge for everybody this week. Go out there, pick one tiny habit that you want to create and anchor it.
Just
Tie it to
one.
something you're
Yeah.
already doing. Yep, just one. Make it super small. Anchor that to something you're already doing, something that's part of your daily routine. Shrink it down. If you think it's tiny, make it microscopic, you know. And if you feel like it's ridiculously small, you're probably doing it right. And then once you've completed it on a daily basis, celebrate it. Just do that ridiculous fist pump if you have to. Whatever it is that makes you feel good about succeeding and about accomplishing that, give that a try too.
Yeah. And remember, one breath leads to meditation practice. One push up leads to you getting stronger and doing workouts. One sentence leads to writing a book. You don't build a mountain, you stack pebbles with that tiny little teaspoon.
I like that the teaspoon came back around. So with that, we'll see you next time on Behavior Shift. Get out there, start something tiny, and just watch and see what happens.